Good evening, TheoTrade. This is Corey Rosenblum, and you're watching the Theo Nightly Video for the 20th of June. Here it's 2023. I have one major thing to talk about in tonight's video, and that's going to start us off with FedEx Earnings, FedEx Earnings, which just came out right before I hit the record button. Let's talk about the expected move before we start in on the earnings. For FedEx, it had or has an expected move with an implied volatility of 98%. That means about a $16.40 expected move on earnings. Taken from the 232, 16 down from that is right there. That's 216, boom, to the penny. The market has achieved its expected move, and for the moment, again, you'll know a little more than I will after the video is recorded and posted, of where the stock is trading after hours. But for now, right after the close, it is down to its expected move and then right back up. That's the after hours market. On the big picture, it did have a sell side activity, or at least a sell swing or a sell position into resistance just shy of that 240 per share, and down the market goes. So if all things stay the same, and we open, roughly speaking, where we are now, FedEx will be down to this 226 level, 224, maybe even lower than that. It wasn't just FedEx that had a down day today. Most stocks in the S&P 500 did, and in fact, taking a look at those, we'll look just quickly at the heat map because this is something that is different. It's been a while since we've seen a down day, at least I would call this a down day. It is a down day, but it's not really a 1 or 2% slide. And the things that stand out, every sector in the market was down in today's session. The ones that were down the most, energy XLE, which ties right here into crude oil, down about 1.5%. Outside of that, B is going to be materials. And under that is U for utilities. Everything else was down, but not by more than 1%. And there is one positive in today's session, and you're looking at it. It's Amazon and Tesla. In fact, those stocks alone were worth a good chunk of the movement to the upside in the XLY. And those stocks alone, I know we have to say NVIDIA as well, and Meta for that matter, were on the bull side. And those contributed to the levitation, or at least the lack of significant sell-side activity in the NASDAQ. And let's take a look at those. In the NASDAQ 100, we have a split where these big monsters of tech, Microsoft, Google, to an extent Apple, and to an extent Amazon, were down on the session, but it didn't matter. NVIDIA, Meta, and Tesla being up, you see it here, 5%, and NVIDIA being up 2.5%, Meta being up 1%. That was enough to make the NASDAQ almost positive. In fact, the NASDAQ spent the bulk of the session in the positive side of the market. It showed relative strength today. And these stocks you see outside, there's Tesla, there's the 5% update, just getting stronger. We have NVIDIA, another 52-week high for that stock, and Salesforce.com. Others would include Meta, not quite there, the 52-week high. But nonetheless, we'll do another scan and update their results to show there it is. NVIDIA was the strongest or the leading market cap that made a new 52-week high in today's session. Now, not for the purpose of tonight's video other than a quick mention, but I spent a lot of time in my session this afternoon discussing home builder stocks. So I do scans each evening for stocks making 52-week highs, and often I'll post those lists and candidates to be bullish on the upside or bearish to the downside if they're making new 52-week lows. But I do want to bring to your attention at least DHI, D.R. Horton, is a home builder. Lennar is a home builder, and then Pulte Group, Pulte Homes, is a home builder. That's going to be XHB for the home builders. And we'll take a quick look at DHI, LEN, and PHM. Why? Because they are on the upside of strong, getting stronger, again, making 52-week highs. So Pulte and then Lennar. And the broader housing sector, HXB, is making those 52-week highs. Something to keep an eye on as the rates of the Treasury or the Federal Reserve continue to go higher. The housing market is showing great resilience in the face of raising rates, which we can look at from TNX. TNX is your 10-year Treasury note yield, and that is, roughly speaking, about 3.8%. Fed funds rate's above that 5%, 5 or so, but the Fed funds rate is the overnight, or the Fed funds, what banks charge each other. The TNX is the 10-year Treasury note yield, and mortgages and others are based on 10-year and 30-year yields, which are around that, just shy of that 4% level. And of course, TLT is the other side of the trade, which is the bond market, or the futures ZN or ZB. So those are still on the way down. And if the Federal Reserve does raise rates, they did not choose to do so as was expected last Wednesday, but Chair Powell will be in front of some committees, and he'll give some testimony and of course face some questions, and maybe even some tough questions, but he will give his outlook on the state of the economy and the rate hikes in the future. What the jobs report, which he and the committee deemed to be a little better than expected. So in his forecast from Wednesday, we learned that they believe that the unemployment rate will continue to get better as in lower, but inflation could and probably will turn higher a little bit later. And that will give him cover, or maybe not cover, but give him the reason to raise rates at least one more time, possibly 2 times in 2023. So keeping a close watch on the bond market and yields. But outside of those, we still see this resiliency or consistent up move. We'll go back to a little intraday chart of the NASDAQ and of XLY, which is consumer discretionary. Why does this matter? The biggest stocks in the consumer discretionary sector ETF are Amazon, that's 25% of the entire ETF, and the other right behind it, Tesla, at 19%. So roughly speaking, 45% of the diversity of the XLY, which is your retail or consumer discretionary sector, are 2 stocks. Under that is Home Depot, and then McDonald's, Nike, and Lowe's, Starbucks, and down the list. But just know that the XLY is concentrated in Amazon and Tesla. Similarly, the XLK, which is our technology sector, is concentrated in just keeping the math simple, 24% is Microsoft, 22.5% is Apple, and then right under that is 6% is Nvidia. Broadcom, Adobe, Cisco, and others would make the other bulk of that ETF. So again, diversification, not as much as we think we have in those particular ETFs and the NASDAQ itself. So not a lot in terms of large stocks. Accenture actually will release this week too. And then the other stocks, not much in the week ahead. Walgreens, Nike. And then we start to see the cycle start over with financial companies. So 3 or so weeks later in July, middle of July, we'll start to see some earnings concentrate in the financial sector. That's BlackRock, Wells Fargo, Citigroup, JP Morgan, and of course then we'll see others come later. So not a lot. And for this week ahead, it is a holiday week. Where are we in terms of our implied volatility? Just looking forward. For Wednesday, looking at the S&P futures, roughly speaking, about a 28, call it handle, a 28-point move up or down. For Thursday, that's going to push it to 30. So not a lot between Wednesday and Thursday. And finally, Friday, which is going to close out the week, we're looking at 46. So that is Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday. So a little bump going into Friday in the implied volatility from 10% to 13%. And in the NASDAQ, just a quick note of what we're looking at there. Not much different. implied volatility percent 16, 17, 18. So we will be having a little bit increase in volatility as the week goes on, but 133 handles on Wednesday. And then we're looking at roughly 182 for Thursday, and the bump is going to come on Friday as we go through the remainder of the week ahead. So keep a close watch on this week. Again, holiday week, volatility, relatively speaking, low. The VIX volatility index, as volatile as it was, did close the session, at least after hours, down just a little bit. And a quick peek at the 1-minute chart sees the early morning rally, and the afternoon closed that VIX at the lows, and the S&P. There's the move to the downside on the small time frame, but that was reversed. 44.11 dawn gravity point, or at least a dawn 44.11 reference point. That was the low of the session ahead of an afternoon rally. So always be careful and safe. This is Corey Rosenblum with tonight's Theo video update for June 20th, 2023.